My name is LeBron Martin. On behalf of the Martin Luther King Commission of Florida, I would like to welcome you to the 2023 Town Hall Symposium. So, as you've heard, hopefully throughout this entire series of week-long events, the King Commission is going through a process of rebranding, a process of making sure, as the Dean says, that we understand the assignment. So what is the assignment? The assignment has always been to always try to do what we can to make the conditions for Black folks in this country better. That's what King understood, and that's what we hope each and every one of you would understand by the end of this evening. So what we hope to do is have a conversation tonight about the assignment. Now, what you realize here that we are in the business of defeating generational curses. So how do you do that? You build legacy. And what is legacy? Taking those strongest foundations that we have from the past and projecting it into the future. Now, we spent a great deal of time talking about, well, back in my day, it was like this. And you folks, young folks, don't quite know what's going on. But I think we should take a moment to understand that whenever the best results come from a conversation from all the stakeholders. And so we're talking about a generational change, fighting generational curses. Let's talk to the people from each and every generation. So right now, there are probably about 5 living generations present here in our society. You have the greatest generation, those individuals who are with, who fought World War I, the silent generation, which is King's generation, the baby boomers, Generation X, which I belong to. You have the millennials, which we spent so much time talking about, and you have Generation Z. And coming up right behind them, automatically, is Generation Alpha. So what we hope to do is have a conversation with at least some representatives from not all those generations, but a good cross-section of them. So what I like to do is let's treat this like a study group. And we're gonna come together and make sure we all understand the assignment. So let me introduce you to our study group leaders tonight. All right, so starting from my left, we have Mr. Phil Wright. And Mr. Wright is a educator who's been in my education career in this community for spanning about 4 Wright is an educational teacher, assistant principal at Howard Bishop, when he was middle in Eastside High School, and he was principal at Oakview Middle School. And I think he ended his career as assistant to the superintendent at the county office. More importantly, he's also a published author. When he talked about his experiences growing up in a family of civil rights activists. So let's give a warm round of applause. And right next to Mr. Wright, we have Miss Cummings. And Ms. Cummings is also a retired educator. College administrator, rather, spent many years in the field of human resources. She spent 14 years at the University of North Florida and ended her career as the director of human resources at the University of North Florida. What I really want you to know about her, though, is that she was one of the first 3 individuals to integrate Gainesville High School. So let's give this comment. And this is coming, we have Mr. John Alexander. He is the director of the Juvenile Justice and Community Support Programs Office of the City Manager. He's also you know him very well because he spent a lot of time working with the Riker House. And I believe, and he's always proud to tell you that he is a proud son of Gainesville, a proud son of Kennedy Home, always willing and able to come back and serve back his community, and he was an accomplished athlete as well, always ready to challenge the youth to a race. I don't know if he really wants to do that one time, but you gonna challenge somebody tonight? All right, thank you. Let's give Mr. Alexander a round. All right, to my right, we have Ms. Anthony Edwards. Ms. Edwards is the, Anthony, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. She is the Director of Inclusion and Equity for the Pulaski County School Board. She is also an author. I have published 2 books, I believe, or just 3. I mean, okay. Okay. She, even though I did butcher her name, and I apologize for that, I do know that she works with youth, fantastic motivational speaker, and has a real passion spreading the gospel and enlightening us. All right, let's give Ms. Edwards a round. Okay, right next to Ms. Edwards is Ms. High. Right. Ms. High is a senior at PK Young University, PK Young High School, which is affiliated with the University of Florida. Ms. High is going to attend Florida A&M University next year. All right, let's hear it for the rap. She is going to major in healthcare administration. I know she is a member of Mount Carmel Baptist Church, and I will tell you this about Ms. High. We sit around and we talk about children and kids not being engaged. All you have to do is ask Ms. High, and she's there. She's always ready to raise her hand, and yes, I will participate. And that is a valuable thing. And you should keep that up. All right. And next to her, let's give her a round of applause. And next to her, we have Ms. Flanders. Is that correct? All right. Ms. Flanders also is a senior at Eastside High School. And she will be attending Florida A&M University as well. And she will be majoring in agribusiness, agricultural sciences. This is the 3rd time I asked that, and I keep messing it up. With a specialty or emphasis in animal science. And Ms. Flanders is also the Hart Keeper of the Dream Award winner. So let's give her a round. So, as to start this conversation off tonight, I want to remind you, we may have time for question and answers, but we are recording this and streaming it live. So please, at all times, speak into the microphone so that we can record. We are going to ask our panelists engage in a conversation. What we want to do is have them start off with giving us some personal reflection on what King's legacy meant to them. And then we'll proceed with the conversation. So what I'm going to do now is get out the way and allow our panelists to, if you could, just go right down the line and introduce yourself again and give your comments about what King's legacy. And before we do that, I'm sorry, before we do have one more panelist here. I want to introduce Mr. Anthony Richardson here. Now, I suspect Mr. Richardson doesn't need much of introduction in this community. He is a favorite son of this church. A graduate of Eastside High School. He's a sophomore at the University of Florida. And hopefully very soon, he's going to be a quarterback in national football. Yeah. So this, as we're going to go down the line and give everybody a chance to give their reflection that we're going to follow. All right.
Good evening. My name is Gordon Wright, as it was mentioned earlier. And I can say, I guess I am one part of the baby boomers. Now know that generation of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King's name was mentioned in our household just about daily because of the activities of my parents. They were civil rights leaders, particularly my dad, and Martin Luther King was probably an example, a model for my dad to carry on the work that he did. In 1962, 1963 was the first time that I met, or I should say heard in person, Dr. Martin Luther King's speech in St. Augustine, Florida. In 1967, while I was attending Tennessee State University, I heard him again in 1967. And he came to speak at our student body. So what I heard tonight was that Martin Luther King was particularly concerned about black folks and their claim to be recognized better than second-class citizens. But he was concerned about poor people. He was concerned about everyone, the downtrodden. He was concerned about people who did not have a voice. And so that was the message back then. His tactics, where they may seem to be not appropriate today, he was got most of his principles from Mahatma Gandhi out of India. And he had a chance to go to Gandhi's ashram in Ahmedabad. And by the way, my wife and I, in a Fulbright scholarship, had a chance to study at the University of Baroda, where we also visited 22 cities in the country of India. So we had a chance to go to Gandhi's ashram, the same place where Dr. King had gone to visit too, and get most of his teaching of nonviolence. And so he brought that, he studied that, and went to other places as well. And he came back to the United States, and he led the movement. He led the movement of nonviolence. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King was the lead, but there were others too as well. The thing that you need to know about Dr. Martin Luther King, he was the anchor. He was the glue that made the movement work. He led the movement. And so others followed him. And I think he had a major part of where we are today. Is it perfect? No. But I think that what he has done has laid the foundation for all of us to carry on the work that he led and what he began, when he began. So I can go on and on and on because I lived it. I marched in St. Augustine, and I marched a little bit in Gainesville. But it was, his effort was more than just marching and trying to get things changed. He was very concerned about everybody, every race, all the people who were considered second-class citizens. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Thomas, who has a very active experience, and I'm sure she will share some of those things. But I have other things to say as well, and I'll let somebody else talk.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Cummings, as was mentioned previously, and I probably can dovetail off of what Bularon said, because being a member of Mount Carmel Baptist Church, Reverend Wright came here during integration, and he brought Martin Luther King with him. So in the church, that was at the forefront of everything. We heard Martin Luther King, we saw Reverend Wright being heavily involved in the civil rights movement. Reverend Wright talked it, Reverend Wright lived it, and he wanted better for his race of people. And I think in many situations that is why he went ahead and he ran for political office. He moved from the church parsonage to another side of town. He didn't do that just to show that he could. He just did that to show that we could. And I think that was at the thrust of everything. So Ron mentioned, or it was mentioned, that I was one of 3 Black students that integrated Gainesville High School. And of course, that was at the encouragement of Reverend Wright. I told Ron not long ago that oftentimes when Reverend Wright came up with an idea and said something, LaVon, who was Ron's sister, would say, "You don't have to do what he tells you to do. He's not your dad." But Reverend Wright was at the forefront of the civil rights movement, and he wanted better in terms of us having choices. It was not hard for me to want to do that because I had lived in New York for a couple of years and just saw the disparity in education. We had to share books. I remember walking from my house on Fifth Avenue to what you know now is Depot Park. There was a friend of mine who lived there, and we shared a textbook. Many of the textbooks did not have, the pages were missing in them. We had to share the textbook. She would get it on maybe like a Monday. I would meet her in the afternoon to use it on Tuesday, so we shared the textbook. The things in terms of equipment and laboratory, science laboratory, we did not have that. Some of the other offerings that Gainesville High School offered, they were not offered at Lincoln High School. It was nothing about the teachers, it was just what was the disparity in education and the disparity in offering of courses. And I think that was a lot of what Reverend Wright was looking at. He was looking at to make everything equal. We want to be on an equal footing or equal basis. And so that was at the thrust of what he wanted us to do. Of course, got a lot of opposition, even within my own family. My grandfather, who was of that generation of not wanting to cross anything, felt that everything was fine the way it is. Why are you trying to, make any kind of trouble or make any waves? But that was because, he worked for many prominent white families in this town. If I were to call the names, you would probably know quite a few of them. And they, were not in favor of us being together in high school. And as Solon said, I could probably share quite a few stories with you of my early encounters at Gainesville High School. Oftentimes when I recount those things to my children, they are amazed about it because they say to me, well, there are just as many people of our race that treat us differently, but this was a difference that you just couldn't imagine. And I'll give you one example and then I'll pass it on. I never will forget this, going through the lunch line. Here I am, a 10th grader, going through the lunch line. The lunchroom worker, she's fixing the plate. She gave me one teaspoon of mashed potatoes. She took the meat, I don't even remember what kind of meat it was, and she cut it like in fours. And she handed that to me and laughed as she gave me my lunch for the day. She took the roll, I'm not kidding, she took the roll and she took a spoon and she scooped the roll out and dropped the roll on my plate. And that was my lunch for the day. So when you talk about the challenges and the things that you go through, that's just one of the things that, just pops in my mind. one of three that would integrate Gainesville High School. What is now there? Like Ron said, it is a job, then it is not, and that we cannot afford to sit still and not continue what was done. Different aspects, but we cannot stand to sit and not continue what has been laid by our forefathers. We continue to stand on the shoulders, and I could call many, many names of people that we stand on the shoulders, but to us, Reverend Wright, the church, always at the forefront, Martin Luther King, you gotta do better, you can live here, you can do this, you can, anything you wanna achieve, you can put your mind to it.
John Alexander, thank you both. I have a freshman at Gainesville High School, and I wish he was sitting here in the audience to hear the privilege that it is to go there. And man, it's just humbling to hear that. I'm on the tail end of the millennial generation, so I got the best of what people would say. And unfortunately for some of us, we, of course, never got a chance to have those experiences. But in terms of it being taught in King's legacy, we had to do our research to find true purposes of what that meant today to us. I can remember, not hearing about Dr. King until January in school. It just wasn't there. And if you wanted to know the true purposes of what King did, was only thing, a lot of things we were taught was just the I have a dream speech. King had a dream, but we were never really taught the part about he wanted us to wake up and walk out the dream, like what it meant. And we weren't able to identify with the true purposes and struggles of a lot of those things that took place. And so I went 14 years of my life as a kid, not really understanding that purpose until I had an encounter with a gentleman named David Dukes. Not that David Dukes. I always have to put that disclaimer out there. Okay, this is David Dukes of Madison, Florida, former civil rights activist leader, led all the sit-ins in Madison, was exiled out of the city, was beaten, was threatened, was chased, and under his leadership, as a teenager, I had to, as a punishment, I had to learn that I have a dream speech. So I remember learning the speech, and I come back to him. And I say, well, Mr. Dukes, I learned the speech, and I started. He said, go ahead. And I said, I have a dream. He said, no, sir. You go back and learn the whole speech. And so it was then when I began to look at the entire speech that I began to understand the depth of what that speech meant. And it fueled me to begin to do more research about the life of Dr. King. And so when I think about Dr. King, three things come to mind: purpose, promise, and position. And the purpose is, as a young man, 15, think about how young he was when he graduated from college. What that had to look like and feel like in the midst of people who thought that he didn't belong there. And he had to be convicted with his purpose. He had to know early on that I have a purpose in life, and so I'm here, and I'm a prisoner to this purpose. The second thing is a promise. When he began to do the activism in the community, that the sacrifice that he was putting his family. Oftentimes we don't think about that he had to know in the back of his mind that he could lose his entire family, he could lose his life, and the risk that he was taking. When I look at the resume of Dr. King, at any point in time, he could have stepped off of that pedestal of sacrifice and would have lived his life happily, with all the credentials that he had, but there was a promise of equality, a promise of hope, a promise that we could cohabitate in this world. And that was very important to me. The last one was position. One of the last speeches that he made was not just about having equal rights, but when you start talking about economics, positioning ourselves as a people to not just be empowered through our voice, but through our economic means. and stability. And so when I just look at, I can go on and on about that, but all of those things that I'm saying, I had to research, I had to dig for it. I had to find people and educators who are willing to sit down and have these conversations with you. Because oftentimes when you look at the textbook, it started with, I have a dream. And that was it. So that's why I serve in my community the way that I do, because I'm hoping that I found my purpose in serving through the efforts of things that we've heard up here in the efforts of Dr. King. I feel like I have a promise for the young people, in terms of having a future in our community and to position them to not just be successful as individuals, but be successful as well-rounded citizens doing great contributions to our world.
Oh, good goodness.
I hope that you all feel great tonight. Thank you for the invitation to be
Oh, my
here on this
goodness.
evening. I think that John shared a lot of what I was thinking in my head, but I think I'll just say it in a different way. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and his legacy for me, I think, really was the epitome of being able to say that sacrifice is important. And that you can fight a fight without necessarily using your hands, but to use your intellect and to strategize is crucial. And so many times people utilize a lot of energy to do the fighting, but the strategies and who you choose to be on your team and to work with you is how momentum is built and how change can occur. For me, of course, I also did not have an opportunity to meet him, but I lived in a household with a mother who made it very clear that she lived through the experiences of the civil rights. And so when I look at certain programs, even to this day, my mother does not like to go to certain movies. My sisters and I know, like, don't even bother to ask mommy if she wants to go to that, because for her, it brings back a lot of very dreadful memories. And so for me, even though I live my life and I've seen some things, it showed me the impact by seeing my mother today still having those responses, the residue of trauma that was left from the experiences, and how when he stood on that platform, he was addressing for the world the kind of trauma that people were experiencing, and said we need to be people in life who are not just bystanders, that we have to stand up and make a difference for others and work with people to make change so that that type of trauma does not continue to perpetuate throughout our history. And that is, I think, the legacy that he has left for me is about moving with people who make change for the betterment of all, and to make it clear that everybody has that right? The right to have hope, the right to grow, the right to, exercise life in the way that they desire, and that there is no other category of person who should be able to put you in a place of bondage. And so those are the things I think that remain, and I definitely, I can understand the sentiments of those who shared before me, but I'm gonna hand it over to our young people.
Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Saidi Kai, as was previously stated. So my journey kind of begins, I'm Gen Z, I'm 18 years old, so I'm not a millennial, I'm not older than that. So my journey with Dr. King primarily starts in school. For most of my life, I was raised primarily by my mother, by herself. My father was not very present in my life, and at this moment, he still isn't very present. So I never really got a real grasp on the teachings of Dr. King, unfortunately, until I got to school. And as you know, I was in elementary school in Ocala, Florida. So there really wasn't a lot of information on Dr. King, other than what they would talk to us about it. Assemblies, the I Have a Dream speech, things of that sort. So unfortunately for me, my great grandmother passed in 2020 due to COVID. She was inside one of the rehab services here in Gainesville, Florida, and unfortunately, they were not taking care of her like they were supposed to. She was falling out of her bed, contracted multiple UTIs. And so this was very big to me because I went to Havens Hospice and watched my grandmother die for about 5 days. And every day it got harder. So I didn't experience my own real form of racism in healthcare until I turned about 16 years old. So I have lupus, SLE, and I also have Sjogren's syndrome. And so my journey to getting diagnosed with these two autoimmune diseases was one of major disappointments. I can't tell you how many times I went to doctors, told them there's something wrong with me, and nobody would listen. I was always just given different sorts of painkillers and muscle relaxers and things of that sort. And so, unfortunately, me and my mother got into a car accident September 28th, and I was transported to North Florida. And they found that I had fluid in my lungs, fluid around my heart, my kidneys were failing, I had enlarged lymph nodes. And so, at first, they thought it was cancer. So, I was scheduled to get a bone marrow biopsy, and then they did my blood testing, and it ended up being lupus. And so for me, being a senior at PK Young is a graduation requirement for us to do a senior project. And so I did my senior project on healthcare disparities in minorities, primarily Black people in the United States. Through my research, I found devastating statistics on the mistreatment of Black people, starting from slavery, J. Marion Sims, how he would experiment on Black women without anesthesia and was named the father of gynecology. So it was very essential for me as a Black female who will be in healthcare for most of her life, as Sjogren's and lupus are lifelong illnesses. It was important to me to know what I was supposed to do to advocate for myself. And so I was awarded Best Senior Presentation for my room. And I'll be able to give my presentation to the University of Florida and what I believe we need to start doing as a people. And so my main reason for picking that topic was to advocate for my Black brothers and sisters that are my age and younger than me. Being as naive as I was and just kind of accepting the fact, okay, that there's nothing wrong with me for almost over a year, made me realize how devastating it can be to one's health and one's even mental health. For a long time I was depressed and thought that I was crazy. And as I said, my kidneys were failing. I always had to be put on kidney dialysis when I was in the hospital. So that was really what was important to me. So for me, my main goal is to be a trailblazer in my community, to light the path for other people, to know that it is important to advocate for yourself, just as Dr. King advocated for the people. And not only will I be pursuing a degree in health administration, I would like to open my own clinics and hospitals to be able to make sure that I am leading the way for the other generations, making sure that my people have proper health care, proper insurance plans, and so that's all thanks to Dr. King and helping me realize that that was a problem in our community.
Good evening, everyone. As mentioned earlier, my name is Makayla Flanders. I am a part of generation X. I grew up in the school system, and like I tell everyone, when you go to our history classes in school, they don't inform you of the real truth behind Black history. They like to sugarcoat everything that is seen as negative towards the other races that participate in hateful action towards ourselves. And I like to think of Martin Luther King as like a blueprint, because everything we're seeing happen nowadays is like a cycle that continues to happen. The police brutality, the injustices, everything is happening all over again. And it's like we can look back in time and say, hey, this isn't new. This is something that has been continuing to happen for us and for our people. And it gives us an idea of what our past ancestors had to deal with. And it's kind of like they left path for us to follow and continue, but it's up to us to follow that path along the way. And it's important that we don't lose sight of what's actually happening in today's society. As mentioned before, as she said, like growing up, you know, you don't see too many black doctors and stuff happening as in white doctors. And that's really because of supporting and seeing the way we get pushed down the line in our schooling. And it's important to like encourage people when you see our black brothers and sisters to tell them that what they want to do isn't impossible. They say the sky is the limit, but nobody knows what the limit really is. Push past that limit to do better, become better, and show other people that they can be better. Don't fight the negativity with the negative, be positive. Someone says something to you, you know, give them positivity. I swear, catch them off guard, they don't know what to do. But it's just good to fight negative with positive. And I think Dr. King really is a great and prime example of what our generation needs to follow and continue to do.
Like they said, but I find it fascinating how, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King has influence and, you know, had a say on each person's life up here, you know. Okay, I got you. No, I just wanted, you know, it's crazy to see how influential he was on different people. You know, growing up, you always thought like you had to line up because it was something required for school. So you don't necessarily know the depths and the history behind all the things he's done for us and, you know, our race and just the people in the world in general. You know, I myself, being a young black man, still don't know a lot about Dr. Martin Luther King because I've only learned about the I Have a Dream speech. You know, that was pretty much the main thing and the main focus whenever I was in school. You know, they never really taught us the ins and outs and the real grit behind all the stuff that really happened. You know, and it's kind of crazy to think about it. Like as a youth and younger generation, we kind of overlook things and people that were actually involved in it, such as these people down here. You know, we see it as just a course and an assignment that we have to do now. Whenever we're in school, you know, we don't actually reach out and connect with people who's actually been through it. Because like they said, it's a recurring cycle, and it's going to continue to happen if we don't educate ourselves and, you know, try to push on and continue the legacy that he's left behind for us. You know, so it's just fascinating to see how he's impacted different people, and especially myself, because I feel like he was the voice that we all needed, and we all want. You know, he wasn't afraid to speak up and own up to certain things for us. You know, so I appreciate everybody for speaking and talking about their experiences, and I just hope that we continue, you know, just build and grow this legacy.
If you notice that we lined up our panelists the best we could by generation. And if you did pay close attention to certain things said, the way it moved, it went from the concrete, we lived it, we know it, to the abstract, that we know it's important, but how important, how significant it was is more through osmosis than the real experience. So then that begs the question, is what Dr. King, the work that he did, the person that, well, is it really relevant to the struggles that this Generation Z has to face? No judgment is to some extent about results, and can they really look at those individuals who toil and shed blood to pave the way, and that's important, but are they able to apply those principles today? I'm gonna let you go ahead and address that. Because one of the things you said was there are a number of other people who surrounded the movement. Dr. King was the face of the movement. He was the soul of the movement, and that's who that was the one. When he said, "I have a dream," he was able to articulate what everybody was thinking, right? And that's magical. What I want you to do, I do have one of those people who was instrumental to the civil rights movement, particularly the March on Washington, Mr. Bayard Rustin, who is an individual who we don't always know about. What I want to do is play a short clip of some words that he said about the movement and that impact the movement has on the future. And then I want to try to get your comments, and I want to try to get everybody to get to say something. So I'm kind of out back and forth. But I see you were eager to go, Phil Ron, so I'm gonna get you. So let's go ahead and play the clip first.
Okay.
And I want you to comment on it. And I'm sorry, so this is Mr. Bayard Rustin. This is an interview that took place in 1979 that was discussing the impact of the movement on the present and in the future. And to give you a little background on who he was very briefly, he was the person who I would say would be the architect of the March on Washington. He's the person who made sure everybody was where they needed to be, when they needed to be. And part of this was his vision. Absolutely, Dr. King was the soul, but to some extent, this young was great.
Public accommodation and the right to send your child to school of your choice. It had nothing to do with the North, fundamentally. It had only to do with the South, and it did not invest itself in any way to the economic and social problems of Black people. That is the reason it's such a different movement than we have today. So it succeeded because its objectives were very concrete and exceedingly limited. But when you get into the question of full employment, hospital care, the nature of work, medical care, then you are no longer talking about civil rights. No, I don't think any of the lessons of that period are applicable to now. Well, I don't think so. Well, I think there are some lessons if we start where I start. And the first lesson is don't try to repeat what you've done because we're in a different period. That's the first lesson. Second lesson is that protest is no substitute for the ballot box, which we have now. When we didn't have the ballot box, protest was the logical way. Once you have the ballot box, protest is useless. And the fact is you cannot get blacks into the ballot box. Third of the blacks who can vote. That's our problem. Oh yes, that's the reason we're not succeeding now. We got hundreds, thousands of people voting with their feet. Now we cannot get them to use their feet to go to the ballot box. And therefore there is not the involvement of hundreds of thousands of people today. We're depending on rhetoric and a few people in the Congress to solve our problems for us. Well, I think.
Okay. So that's Mr. Rustin's opinion. But he gives rise to certain points, and I want to point out this. This is in 1979, and you're talking about black people won't come out to vote. Dr. King's early mission was specifically on public accommodations, the right to vote, and equal access to education. Very specific, very narrow, and achievable. And to some extent, they did achieve it. I think, as you were alluded to, Phil, is that they did move on into poor people. So if given that context, and he was a little negative right there, is what King and his contemporaries doing still relevant to these young people today?
And the answer to your question is absolutely yes. As I said earlier, Dr. King constructed a foundation. What he did was uncover and reveal to the nation the sins of America. And what I mean by that is the inequities of what was going on with Black people and people who were downtrodden, people who had less. And so that's what he did. He did so much. I was listening to Mr. Richardson. You are absolutely right. There's so much you don't know. I mean, I taught history. My wife taught history. And we have a wealth of information that we can share to the young people of our experiences. I mean, just for example, he mentioned the medical thing. Did you know that Black folks in 1962 didn't have no place, no doctor to go to? They had to go out of town. However, here in Gainesville, we were fortunate. We had one doctor, and that was Dr. Banks. One doctor. My family came from St. Augustine and Boynton Beach, Florida, down south in West Palm Beach. Any Black person that had to go to a doctor had to go travel maybe 50 or 60 or 100 miles to get to a doctor. That sounds foreign, doesn't it? It sounds crazy. It's unreal. I mean, these are one of the realities that happens. Now, you mentioned about teaching, Mr. Richardson, in the classroom. We didn't have our hands tied in the classroom when my wife and I were teaching. Now you have leaders, state level leaders who are saying you cannot teach critical race theory and all these other things. Unheard of. In other words, they want you to put a muzzle on your mouth about history. They want you to not teach at all. In fear of, and here's their rationale, of impugning and putting down colored people of the past. That's not what the mission was. We're just trying to teach the past of what actually happened. You know, the first tragedy that happened here in the state of Florida was, it happened years ago, but Hart Keeper. How many of you knew about Hart Keeper and his family? Hart Keeper and his family were killed and bombed out.
That's right.
On Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. That was the first in 1953 or 54.
NAACP.
And that was an example of what was going on throughout America. So there's so much to say. Is the question, I got so much that I can say. My family lived it. And the experiences that we went through, and it's in my book, what we went through is just unbelievable. We ran out of St. Augustine in the middle of the night to get to Gainesville because of my daddy's activities. So, there's so many examples. Mine is just one. And I tell the story about my family. Every one of us that you of the generation has a story to tell about what happened in your family. So they are, excuse me if I we watching, that's all we come. There's so much we can share that will enlighten you so you will know exactly what your history is all about. We employ, All right, I must close out. But we understand. I wish there was a way. I did 43 years in the school system. I'm not going back. But I wish there was a way that we could share more information about American history, Black history, and sport.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And so go ahead.
I just want to say, I think one of the key things, and those of you who are my age, perhaps you can relate to this, is that the church played such an integral part in Black history. And so it was not just left up to the schools. It was the church. And that's where many of us got our, got our backing from. That's where many of us got a lot of the information that we know about Black history. It was in the church. And I just think that, right now, in terms of, I have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and you say, is King's legacy, is that relevant to what's going on? And I often in my mind think, wow, I don't know if I could raise a child in this particular generation with all the things that they are encountering. And race is just one of them, but there's so many other things going on. There's the crime, there's the gangs, guns, all of that they're dealing with now. But here again, my mind is taking me back to the church. The church did a lot. And so I think the church is now called to be on assignment again to do a lot.
Amen.
Do a lot with rescuing our young people, to do a lot with giving them, I won't say hope, but just giving them some other alternatives. And I'm not saying that the church does not do a good job, but just keep in mind that many of us are where we are because of the church.
So as we move down through the generations, let me ask the same question, but for a little different angle here, because I know, John, you identified yourself as a millennial. Tail end, right there. You didn't say where you were Gen X. All right, so. All right, so there was something interesting that happened at the Martin Luther King Bank. We had an excellent keynote address by very own Miss Flanders. And one of the things that she commented on is whether or not somewhere along the way from the concrete to the abstract, did someone drop the ball? Right there. And I got to come, but I'm one who's in the middle. And I will tell you one of the things as a Gen Xer, someone who was in the middle, we had quite often, we got skipped over. Right? And the environment was somewhat different. Here you had the stories that you told about some very overt racism. And then we move into these young people, and now we're talking about critical race theory. It's a little more subversive. It is a little more undercover. And then along comes a certain person, and now you can say it out loud. When I was growing up, it was still very prevalent, but it was very clear that you couldn't say certain things out loud without repercussions. Is that your experience? Do you think somewhere along the line that the middle generation didn't do an effective job of passing the legacy along, or do you have a completely different opinion?
It's a loaded question, but because it's complex, and I don't think it's singular. I don't think you can pinpoint one specific thing. I think, and part of Dr. King's speech, he talked about that now is no time for cooling off. So he talked about the tranquilizing gradualism. And I think with new opportunities to our race, opportunities to go to school, opportunities to live in better neighborhoods, this is a reality oftentimes we don't talk about. Some people within our own race, they left, they didn't look back. They didn't look back. And I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but they didn't look back. They moved to the better side of town, where the grass was greener, where the fence was white, where people put their trash outside of the road and the recycle bins. I say that because we did an experiment with the kids and rode them around every quadrant of the city. And that was one of the glaring things that they pointed out. They said, man, people over here, well, their trash is in the trash can. And they got a orange recycle bin and a blue one. But over here, the trash is on the ground. There is no recycle bins. That happened. Gradualism took place. And I'm not faulting anyone for that, because I think that was part of the struggle, is that we live better. But one of the things that Dr. King never wanted is for us to forget where we came from. And so when we begin to look at, you say something was skipped over in the process of all that, in the middle of a crack epidemic, in the middle of an incarceration sweep epidemic of our fathers out of the home. It was almost as if you left a generation. Imagine a boxing match happening. You hear the crowds, you hear the people, and the lights are flashing, they're on, the cameras are flashing, and you have two opponents in the ring and they're fighting and they can see each other. What our generation kind of began to face is, imagine all of those things are still happening, but someone turned the lights off. And the opponent can see you, but you can't see them. You can't see where the punches are coming from anymore, because the fight doesn't look the same, but you still know this happening. And that's where we began to lose ground. And then all of a sudden, someone turned the lights on and say, why you didn't win? Why you didn't compete right? Why you didn't, you had a fair opportunity to fight, but I didn't. You turned the lights off. And that's how, when I look at this generation that I have chosen, and it was a choice. And you got to be called to that work. I'm going to tell you, you in education, and you got to be called to work with this. It got to be a call. When I look at this generation, I hear people criticize them. It tears my heart apart, because when they were born, they did not look up to the doctor and say, I don't care anymore. Something happened in that process. And I'll stop there. It is relevant. It should be more relevant. And the church as a whole, now I am an ordained elder. I preach the gospel. Let me make that clear. But the church as a whole kind of stepped away from the table. And we got more into the spiritual realm and stepped out of the practical realm of teaching and mentoring and hand-holding and guiding. That I saw that. But Reverend Wright, I'm going to pass this mic after this. Little boy Kennedy Holmes, living in A section. Miss Glennette and Miss Shahi was my babysitter. Miss Shahi performed CPR on me and brought me back to life in her apartment. That little spider in the middle of A section, I had 7 brothers and sisters. We owned that spider. And nobody would come in the neighborhood and work with us, because we was bad. We was what people call bad. But Reverend Wright and Gang, but Reverend Wright will come and drive that van in Kennedy Homes and pick us up for Vacation Bible School and make us go to his church. I'll never forget that. And one day we went to his church and we had an all-out brawl, Kennedy Homes against Lake Road. I was right there with the guy punched in the face every day. She's Dr. Hayes, remember, my brother and sister in the mix. And we tore that church up. I mean, church chairs flying everywhere. And the next week, he came to pick us up again. I'm sorry.
So I think in my reflection, I think about relevance really being equated to choice. And so we have to be very intentional about the choices that we make, even to share stories. And earlier, when I made mention of my mom not wanting to watch particular movies and things like that, it wasn't a point of forgetting, however. She would continue on with the story. I don't need to watch that because I remember when I couldn't drink from the fountain. I remember when I was separated. And she would tell the stories about her educational experiences when she was in Tampa, Florida before. Now, I grew up up north. My parents migrated, my mom from Florida and my dad from North Carolina, and so they met in Connecticut, and that's where I was born and raised. But I have some very clear pictures and images of what happened in the farms in North Carolina and what happened down in Florida in my space of growing up. And so when you talk about Generation X and you talk about has that been passed down, I think that there are several things that are significant. One is that when there were more freedoms given, more people working, and I think that became more true of our parents, women in particularly, who were going into the workforce. In the busyness of life, were the stories being passed down? Because without that, you miss so much. Now, John has mentioned that I work in the school system, and I'm about as real as they can come. And so I have all kinds of conversations with kids. And it is evident to me that there is a missing understanding of history, or even sometimes the noticing of anything that has even happened. They're living life in today, not always understanding what the history behind it is. And so, you know, the thing is always wondering, like, well, how did that happen? I understand that, yes, there are things that may be missing from school, but where did it become missing in the family system that it wasn't passed down? Because school didn't just stop teaching those historical foundations today. That had been the case for years on end. So where is it that the whole next generation doesn't have a clue about what's happened before? A lot of that, in my opinion, has to do with family systems. So when I think about, you know, how relevant is it, I think that in order for the relevance to be carried on into this future generation, it has a lot to do with the entire community. The church, the family, the school, we all have our parts to play, and if everyone is just feeling like somebody else needs to do more over here, but they're not doing their part where they stand, we're gonna just continue to perpetuate issues and concerns for generations to come. The other portion that I wanted to say about relevance is that, you know, as it relates to choice, is that, you know, just like these two young ladies said, they made a choice to do research. There were things of interest, but they dug in further, right? They looked you know, to gain insights from things. And so having that quest or even thirst for learning is really important, and being able to see how it ties into things that are practical and choosing to find that information, I think, is important. I think that our kids today can really relate to a lot of the hardships that Phil Wright and Sandra Cummings have spoken of. It looks different. There are so many similarities. And we have so much of the generational divide to our young people cannot recognize how similar some of the experiences they have today are with what has happened in the past. And it's unfortunate that they don't recognize that they are closer together and more similar to each other than they are different. And that there's a lot of the same fight that still needs to happen today. So I'll stop here.
All right, so I want to adjust the question just ever slightly for our young people. We've heard about the struggles that the older generation has very concretely went through. And then our middle generation, in which it got more complicated. The focus may have shifted. We didn't talk about gradualism. So here, we are 50 years past the height of the civil rights, if not more. So now we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have YouTube. If you wanted us to know something now, it's at the very touch of your fingertips.
Google.
We have to be very familiar with the Dewey Decimal System. And do you guys know what that is? So the question that I have for you guys would be, have we become victims of our own success? Are things so much obviously easier on the surface, fully acknowledge that there are many difficulties here? And I'm going to address it. I really do want to address some of the difficulties with you because you're a young black male, and I just want to kind of put that to you. The fact that we have so much of this going on, even the social justice movement is more complex on this than the civil rights movement, because we're talking about women's rights, we're talking about indigenous people's rights, we're talking about gay rights, so many things get there. Is it just all too much now? Or is it just too complicated? We've won because Barack Obama was president, and we really don't need that. What are your thoughts on that? And we'll start.
So I will say that I don't think that the fight is over at all. When you're looking at educational equity, and you look at, I go to PK Young, so looking at my differences to what she might experience at Eastside High School. We're fortunate enough to have computers issued to us from the school. I don't think they get to take computers or laptops home. They do? Oh, okay, well, they do. But just looking at how long we were able to do that going to PK Young, I know it was definitely longer than them, and to have that kind of at our fingertips and telling us, you guys don't have Wi-Fi at home, just let us know, we'll come in, but we have to pay for it at school. And so for me, kind of looking at my own struggles, social media is a big part of my life. I'm kind of brought up into it. I got my first iPod at 7 years old, so I grew up in technology. And so even kind of locally in games, like all the different like gang rivalries that are going on, you see us more so fighting against each other than fighting with each other for something that is positive. So it reminds me of kind of like music. So I listen to a lot of music. So when I think about like the messages behind a lot of the songs that we're subjected to, that we're listening to, mainstream pop music, most of the time about drugs, sex, and money, and stuff like that. And so for me, it's like we're not really given, as the generation before us, we're not really given the different outlets that they might have had to go to different church activities and see these different activists speak and things like that. So for us, I do believe that it is a bit harder to be able to kind of grasp the full concepts of everything that happened in the past. And so I think for us, our mission is going to be important for us to, be able to communicate even more. The technological advances that we have are so great. Cell phones, laptops, things like that, they're important for us to use our platforms to be able to speak about things that matter in our society and that matter in order for us to advance as a people, not just individually. So.
When we talk about this generation, what you said about having the first Black president, if we look at our president history, it was 43 Black presidents before the first Black one. Just because we had a first Black president doesn't mean it's over, we should have more by now. And it's actually saddening to see that in history. When we look at our generation, when I talk to my friends, I just hear how unconnected they are with the political system. They're like, oh, it's nothing, or I'm like, oh, you gonna vote when you're able to vote? Nah, my vote don't count. But I remember I was in Walmart with my cousin Ryan, and had to get change back, and it was only a penny. And I said, "You want your penny back?" And he was like, "Yeah, I want my penny back." And I looked, I said, "What's your penny back?" And he says, "A penny gonna make or break $1." And that's why I think when it comes to voting, your vote is gonna make or break an election. And just because you think your voice or your vote doesn't count, it does. It's really important. And America is like a wolf in sheep's clothing. They try to hide and disguise all the racism that's going on, but it's the people in office that are running it. We're just looking at things unfold in front of us, and I don't think the younger generation understand it because we run off of social media. And when it comes to social media, you can post any and everything you want. It's the same thing. You can crop a picture and make it seem like something that's not really not. That's the same thing that we're using when we talk about the world and politically. I see different things about President Biden trying to down talk him and put the things that Trump say above it because they're just taking these little snippets out in the media and portraying to be something it's not. And that's where the young people are getting confused. And I think it's kind of where when they get confused, they don't want to learn about it. So instead of learning about their past, or they swipe past it because, you see a celebrity down on your For You page. But it's really important for us to remember as young people that we are the new generation. We are going to be the people working in offices, and it's important for us to know and to change because the racism is just sitting right in front of our faces, and if we're not careful, it's going to run us over.
That's true.
So I think that, and I feel like proud but sad at the same time. And the reason for that is, as eloquently as that is being stated, my experience in school says that that's a minority of our student population who even have that recognition. I think that's why I said I feel proud, because I'm glad that you're saying that. I'm glad that you recognize this. But I've walked the halls of hundreds and of thousands of kids, and I'm gonna tell you that the majority of them don't even have a recollection of what she's talking about. And so that is the part. Is it relevant? Yes, there's a need, but I don't think that many kids even recognize that the need exists. It is relevant, but do they recognize that it's relevant? And that's where the concern lies. And I just wanted to put that out there because it is worthy of the applause, but there is so much work that needs to be done because, and I'll say even within my own family when it came time to vote, it was like calling and harassing. We bring people to the school so that you all can be prepared, so that you can vote, so that when you turn 18, you don't have to worry about going out and doing these things. And now it's voting time and you're like, I don't want to go out there. Like, what are you talking about? Like, those are the kind of things that become very frustrating, and you recognize that the majority, that's why when she said even her friends, now this is an intellectual, right, student. This is somebody who is standing as a leader, and yet even in her own peer group, she has people who are like, that's concerning.
Very.
So I just wanted to say that.
So let me go ahead and kind of follow up on that real quick. There was something at our last town hall meeting, an issue was brought up about the Black church. That was talking about and the role that it played. And Dr. Anne Marie Mingo was speaking, and she pointed out historically, although the church has been prominent in the civil rights movement, the social justice movement, it was not as universal as you might have thought. That everybody was not necessarily on board. Historically, Martin Luther King was not as beloved universally as we deem him now. Right there. There were King generation referred to as the silent generation, the traditionalists, an individual similar to your grandfather who was like, let's not walk the road. Right. So the question I had, and I was going to address this to Mr. Richardson, we have basically two movements, the civil rights movement, and it has to some degree morphed, evolved into what we have, Black Lives Matter. Now, it's the most visible manifestation of what we formerly refer to as the civil rights movement. But there's a distinct difference in my mind, is that there's not an obvious king in Black Lives Matter. The civil rights movement was very top down. There were strategy meetings, leadership directives, and it kind of went down. Black Lives Matter is more grassroots, more spontaneous, more youth oriented. But the same problem, and Phil Ron probably can attest to this, that you have the endangered black male, young black male. I've been an assistant public defender for going on 25 years. And I'm going to tell you that the issues of the endangered black male that I see in history is still very prevalent for an individual who looks like Mr. Richardson. And we had all these truths that we talked about here tonight. The question has got to be, since we're talking about knowing the assignment, have we come to any solutions to the problem that he's facing? Even though as high profile as he is, as talented as he is, when he gets in his car, and no one knows who he is right there, he's in just as much danger as any number of individuals that are not as high profile as he is. Do we have any solutions to this problem? Any comment on that?
I don't want to take Mr. Richardson on spot, but let's clarify one thing. First of all, hope is not a strategy. And back in the days when you talk about what Dr. Martin Luther King and other leaders did, they strategized just like when AR is in the huddle or when they are in team meetings. You all had a one strategy or several strategies to win the game. So I think what has happened is, in some form or fashion, the gap is that, we have put our faith in so much and that we have forgot how to plan. I think it was a diabolical plan for the black male to be incarcerated. When you took the black male out of the home, and some of it is our fault, but a lot of it, I think you divided and you destroyed the family unit. I really think that it is important that the black male has got to be in the family unit. There's a book that's called Village Folks, Skin Folks, and Kin Folks by Felder. You gotta read it. And it talks about the male. And the part where the male is, the head of the household. It talks about the spirituality. Jesus Christ being the head, the male of the house, of our faith, the male being the head of the family, and so on. And it talks about the village. So we've got to look at that very carefully and how we deal with it. Yes, we've got to maintain our position. The male's got to be part of that unit and the decision making as we move forward. That is a strategy. Keeping the males in place, making sure that they get a good firm grip on what's going on, a good education, value education, as it I think we all give value, and get them to understand that the outcome, there will be a greater and better outcome if they go through that path.
So, Ms. Richard, do you have any comments on that, where there's so much focus on the plight of the young black male? And now, and even though it has kind of always been that way, but it does not seem to be changing that much. Any thoughts on that?
honestly, I don't believe young black men or black men in general have a fair chance, in life. And that's coming from any race. Like, our own brothers and sisters, people our skin color, put us down, they don't want us to succeed. People from other generations, primarily white folks, don't want us to succeed. So I feel like it's easier for us just to put each other down and not support and look out for each other. So when things aren't going our way and we're not doing the right thing, then okay, that's fine, because he doesn't really matter. So when they see a young black man succeed, nobody likes it. Because we start to have a voice, we start to have our own mind, we start thinking the way that they don't want us to think, because we start to
That's right.
get the same thing that they're getting and live in the same life that they're living. They don't want that to happen, and they don't think that's fair for us. So being a young black male, and especially in this generation with social media, like they were talking about, is not fair at all. Because everybody wants to have a voice, but everybody don't want to use it. Like, everybody has an opinion, but half the time this is just nonsense. Like, you can get on social media right now, and anybody can say anything, and somebody don't think it's bad.
That's
A
right.
lot of the stuff that's going on now doesn't make sense. And I think that's why a lot of the things that they're speaking about, like, we're losing sight of that because of all the stuff that we see on social media now. Like, everybody has a voice, but it's not a real voice. Like, they're just saying stuff to distract us from what's really going on. And the fight he was talking about, like, I really like it because the fight has always been there. And it's going to continue to be there because we're black people trying to succeed and go on with our life. And nobody really wants to see that happen, regardless of what skin color you are. Nobody wants to see black people in general succeed. And that's just the way it's been. And the fight and the lights, the whole analogy he said, I think that's real. Because a lot of stuff we go through, like, for instance, like, black people are like getting tortured, like, now to this day, and nobody wants to put out a police report or mention it anywhere. And they're asking, like, why are we not getting justice? Because nobody wants to say anything about it. And nobody really cares about what's really going on with us in our community. So I don't think it's fair for us. I don't think it's fair for anybody.
So I have a 10-year-old son. I've been working with black males for the last 2 decades. And God blessed me with my own son. I'll be honest with you all, sometimes it's embarrassing for me for the conversations I have to have with him. Because he's such an innocent, loving kid. He has no barriers about color. I mean, he's just one of those kids like, Mom, Dad, I love everybody. And it's sad that when I'm watching my son at the playground, just being JW, and I watch him go into that crowd, that multicultural crowd with this innocence about him that says, hey, I want to be your friend. I want to play with you because it's just a playful time. And we're at the park, and there's a football over there. So it looks like that we ought to be able to play together. And you feel your heart beating because you just don't know, like, what did the parents teach some of those other kids about my son's skin color? And so to have those tough conversations with him about, hey, son, I know you got this bright $1 million smile, and I know you love everybody, but just let me give you, that nasty medicine, your mama gave you some time. It's nasty, but it's good for you. I'm about to give you a little bit of that in this conversation. Everybody's not gonna like you. And that beautiful $1 million smile that you give, sometimes it's a threat. And how you don't say car, you don't say I'm traveling in my car. You say car, because that's how it sounded out, and we taught you that. But there's gonna be some people that don't like the fact that you don't say CAH. And you have to be aware that is a tough conversation. Now later that with, son, when you turn 15 and you get your restricts, or you get your license, you driving down the street and you see some lights behind you, that's a whole different conversation. Or son, when you walking down the street and something may have happened in the neighborhood, and yet you get stopped because you fit the description, so that's a whole nother different conversation. And it's somebody said I would hate to raise a child in this generation. I'm telling you, man, it's scary. Like it's I don't believe in fear, but it puts those thoughts in the back of your head. And when he was talking about, I just had to bury one of my kids 2 weeks ago. That was, man, this is emotional because we spend our day in and day out, like laboring with these young people, and you look at them and you be like, man, I would love to go to your wedding, or man, I would love to go to your college graduation, and before you know it, you give a speech at their funeral. Like it tears you apart, and you're like, man, and it's like in our community, if somebody throw a piece of meat in a pit of alligators and you watch those alligators swarm, they will bite the other alligator to eat. Well, when you don't have resources in your community and you don't have the basic necessities and there's disparities, and you get somebody at the top, the puppet master, pulling the strings, and he says, let's drop a morsel and watch a third of them kill each other off to survive. It's called the string theory. Like, people have studied our demise. People have studied our disparities and our struggles, and they continue to study. And the project was just that. It was a project, right? And so these things, and lastly, I'll wrap this up, about our young people and the generation, and they talking about social media. I go home and I know all the lingo because you work with kids. And then the kids be talking around and they'll say something, and you'll be like, really? That's what you think? And you're like, oh, my bad, Dad. But what social media has done, just what it has done is it's given people who no longer know their identity, they can be anybody they want to be online. They can be anything. I mean, they cannot know about all of this history that we're talking about, but online, they can be Juicy J, and they can, I just threw that out there, but they can create their own identity, and just, that was not my name. Somebody it was Dirty Red. It was my name, it's Dirty Red. But they can be anything and anybody who they want to be to the public and the masses. And like you said, everybody gonna jump on that truth of their identity. But on the inside, when they turn that camera off, they crying on the pillow. They talking about committing suicide. I don't feel loved. I don't belong. Where do I fit in? And again, that's another fight that back in the day, in the homes, you were given your identity. You were sat down and taught about who you were. Now, they're having to fight for an image, a purpose. And my heart goes out to the young people.
We're getting close to the end of this, but I do want to give everybody an opportunity to address a subject. And I wanted to bring up the idea of the plight of the black male. Let's see, one of those generational curses. But times, to some extent, does seem to be changing. And I will tell you this, that we came up with a theme for this Martin Luther King weekend. Do you understand the assignment? I got a question. How many of y'all have heard, have TikTok? We're about show of hands real quick. Okay. 1, 2, not that many. Okay. They're in an effort to believe that we were cognizant of the fact that we want to connect to the youth. There's a song, The Assignment. How many of you guys out there in the audience have heard The Assignment? 1, 2. How many of y'all have heard The Assignment? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many of y'all have seen the video? Oh, okay. I was going to ask Pastor to let me play it a little bit, but then I saw the video. I was like, I'm not going to do that. Question. In the civil rights movement, we had many women who played a vital role. However, their names are not as prevalent as King. I'm sure I was not a woman growing up in the early 60s. I'm not a woman who grew up in the 70s, and I'm certainly not a young lady that growing up now. But from what I do see, that there are so many complex issues that they're facing these days. So many media images that are put out, and I gotta say, in my opinion, the song is fun, it's catchy, love it. But some of the images are a bit troubling to me personally.
Yep.
The question is, how has our understanding of what's important in the notion of womanhood, Black womanhood, has that changed over the years? Is that a problem, or is that a good thing? And I would like the women to kind of take a time to reflect on what their observations are. And I'm going to start with you.
Just thinking for a moment. I guess it's kind of a combination of what has already been said. And I think that sometimes we do a disservice to ourselves, Black women. It's almost like Mr. Alexander said, we move on and we forget. When we have the opportunity to reach back and help someone else, sometimes we fail to do that. It's just like Mr. Richardson said. Sometimes people don't want us to succeed. So we're afraid, I think, to bring someone else along. I'm reminded sometimes of even when I worked at the University of Florida, and even at the University of North Florida, and was told on so many occasions that it's not your time. And my answer to that was, well, tell me what it is that I need to do in order to be able to be ready for the next position. The reply back was, well, it's not anything. And the reason I picked this person, no. I don't want to know why you selected that person. Tell me what I can do to make myself ready for the next level. In many occasions, I found that it was not that at all. It was just the not wanting you to make it.
That's right.
But in many cases, I went ahead and I made it. Was told so many times that how can you jump from this level to that level, and you skipped over about 5 or 6 titles that you should have had before you got to be the director.
So let me interrupt you for a second. I apologize. Do you think that issue was because you were Black?
Yes,
You were
I
because
did.
you were a woman, or because you were a Black woman?
Black woman.
Both.
A Black woman has no business being at the table. A Black woman has no business leading this. A Black woman has no business making decisions. A Black woman, a Black woman, a Black woman. It has nothing to do with anything else but that.
Wow.
One of them is entitled Daddy Will Argue because of the absence of fathers, which I think is put a lot of pressure on women to try and run a household that God never ordained them to run. And so it has caused us to be off balance in terms of the spiritual structure that God has set up for us to be successful. So we're fighting not only against the things that we see, but we are certainly fighting against spiritual wickedness. And sometimes when we have those conversations, people don't really understand that they're stepping into that space of spiritual wickedness to be opposition to us. What is really sad, and I think what I continue to, why I said it was emotional, is we are not in the same generation, but she's still telling my story. And that's saddening to me. Even living here, and I will tell you that there has been a difference in my experience living up north and moving down south. There are definitely, I think, some historical ways of thinking that are still existed. I've had some experiences, I pastored a church as a young female, who opened a church on their own in a male-dominated denomination. And people didn't understand how I got there. People didn't understand why I was able to get multiple degrees in my own family. My mother waited until after I graduated, I think for my second master's degree, before she told me that family members said that I would have gotten accepted to University of Florida. I have worked within a school district and been told when I've looked for positions of promotion and asked the same question, well, just show me, tell me what it is that I need to do so that I can, work more so that I can, work towards whatever needs to be done. I'm not even angry. I'm just trying to figure out, what do I need to do to be a good worker, become a great leader? And it was, well, I really wanted a man for a position. It was one of the hardest things that I could hear ever in my life, because I grew up in the dispensation, I guess, or the time period where my mother had taught me that if you devote your effort, if you work hard, there was going to be fruit at the end of that. And I had to come to a realization in life that no matter how hard you work, that the color of your skin is going to make a difference in the eyes of other people. And there are going to be barriers that are set. And I'm not speaking negatively towards my workplace, because people here know where I work, but I will say that even in this role, it is very clear to me that there are some people who don't believe I deserve it, some people who thought that I had it because I knew somebody, couldn't, so all of that's further from the truth. But then even after receiving it, that there are still those times where you don't even get invited to the table. There are times to have the conversation as if the voice doesn't matter. And when I speak to my friends in my generation who have accomplished great things in different fields, it could be in broadcasting, it's a person who's a lawyer, black female, one after another. The story is still her soul. And it's like, how is it that we can come into 2022, advance, have degrees, work hard, start at the bottom and move up, be faithful, and yet still all the barriers are right in place as if we are still in previous generations. And so I say that it's emotional because, and I'll say this to be at the end. I have always been hard on kids. Y'all forgive me if I get ready to cry, because children really are my passion. But I have to explain to teachers and even other leaders a lot of times. If you make it too easy for them, you are crippling them in this world. Because when you work hard, you devote your effort, you can have lots of accolades and positions and all of that, and still this skin that you're in, it's a barrier to being able to move forward. So yes, I'm gonna be hard on the Makaylas of the world, I'm gonna be hard, right? On the Anthonys of the world, because
I need you to give your 110, because when you step outside of this public school sector into this world, ain't nobody trying to give you nothing. And so, you prepare yourself for that. And it's not to mean that it's scary, it's just to be realistic. And you can still have success. You can still move forward, but you have to know who you are. And you have to be able to do the work that is going to be required to be able to move forward, so that you don't second guess yourself. Because when other people are second guessing me, I'm like, you can have all the guesses you want, because I know who I am. And I know that I have a right to my voice, and you don't have to like it. It's okay. And I know that I'm worthy to sit at this table, but I have to know that. And I have to realize the work that I put in that allowed me to get to this place. In my experience in working in school, I see a lot of children walking in the fog along with their parents, who are not helping them to see the necessity of that hard work. And so I agree with her, not just being Black, but being Black and a woman makes it doubly difficult.
So I want to get the perspective of the two young ladies before we wrap it up for the evening. If anyone has, doesn't really want to contribute, or if everybody has something to say, please feel free. But you heard that this is a problem from generation to generation. Do you feel, as up and coming young Black women, your experience in high school, middle school, that somehow it was a little harder for you, not only because you were Black, but because you were a Black woman or Black female?
So I will say that growing up, my mother put me in a lot of PWIs, simply because the education was better, meaning that there weren't a lot of people women who looked like me. And so I can recount going to Blessed Trinity Middle School in California. And this was around the time that Trump and, I forgot his name. But they were kind of going at it, and I remember they asked me, what is your political party? So me being in 6th grade, I'm just going with what my mom goes with. So I said, oh, I'm a Democrat. And they told me that they were going to get Bill Clinton to rape me since I was a Democrat. And so I remember going to the school officials and saying, hey, this boy just told me this simply because of my political party. And this is a God-oriented school. So what are we gonna do about this? And they told me, well, you're gonna have to be ready to face things like this in your life. And that was a white man telling me this. And so for me, I've always kind of held on to that to them, to most white people, my voice does not matter, and my experiences do not matter as a woman. And so even the absence of my father, my biological father, it was really hard for me growing up to know how a woman should be treated and how she should be looked at. My dad called my mother everything in the book, put his hands on her, everything. So growing up seeing that, it made me feel as though when I decide to get a boyfriend or get a husband, I have to let him do these sorts of things to me, to be loved, to be cared about. And so thankfully, she was out of that relationship and is now my stepfather, who now shows me how a man is supposed to treat a woman. And so even looking at social media and stuff, the body image that a Black woman is supposed to have, the things that she's supposed to find important. Pretty doesn't pay bills. It doesn't pay bills, unfortunately. It is important for me, it has always been important for my mother, primarily raising her by herself to show me how determined I am supposed to be, and how 10 times out of 10, I would have to work 50 times harder than my counterparts to get the same position, having the same credentials, and even more. And so, with that being said, even at my experiences at PK Young, I'm on the front page of our school website, which is a huge deal to me. The only Black girl on the front page winning an award. The only Black girl. The first Black girl to decide that she was going to college in my class. The first Black girl. And so for me, it is important for me to lead the way for even my younger cousins. I have a younger sister, 2 years old, Brain, and then I have another sister, 10 years old, Makayla. And then I have 2 cousins that are also girls that stay across the street from me. So it's always been important to me to show them you don't have to be the best in the room, you don't have to have the best hair, the best lashes, the best nails. What's up here is what matters. And what's in your heart is what matters. Not how much money you bring to the table, how much your face looks like. And so as a Black woman going through life, it has been always important to me to be comfortable in my own skin, even though being Black and skinny, it wasn't cute, and it's still not cute. Having to know that, you know, even our Black men have turned away from Black women, that they don't primarily want to be with us, and rather be with somebody of a different race, leaving us. And so it has always been important to me to make sure that I'm comfortable in my own skin as a woman, and don't let these different facades change me and change how I see myself.
As you mentioned before, I think it all starts at home from when the absence of fathers, because we're all in the same community, both male and female, and the Black women, we're the most hated, and we go through a lot, and without the support of our males in this society, bring it on to the wolves. And when I read the comments in the comment section, I just see the disrespect towards the Black women. And that just shows me the difference from a child's mentality of a grown man to the mature mentality of a grown man. Because a grown man won't sit there and let a Black woman get fed to the wolves. And I think it's important to realize that it's okay to have a preference, but there's a difference between having a preference and taking that preference to tear down your own Black women. Because little do they want to acknowledge that their mother is Black. So you turn down your mother while you're turning down your own sisters and brothers. And when it comes to being a Black female, especially in this today's society, you see the young women who don't necessarily have that father figure, so they go look out for love in other places from different males. And you see the boys in school, you see how they treat them. They want someone that's just gonna sit down and let them do something. Because one thing about me, I'm not gonna sit down and listen to nobody tell me what to do. I'm not gonna let you talk to me any kind of way. Because at the end of the day, I am a powerful Black woman, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna represent for my community, and it's important that we teach young women that it's okay to be alone. It's okay to step outside your comfort zone, because you are the leader. Behind every great man is a great woman.
Well, folks, it's almost 9 o'clock. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here this evening. I wish we had more time, but we don't. And so if we can just give a round of applause for all our And we are going to now transition, and I'm going to ask our president of the Martin Luther King Commission to come forward and give a few final remarks. But before he does that, please just give us one more round of applause for people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Bronzy, for putting together such an esteemed panel of people with different perspectives. And I think when you look at the program, when we talk tonight about the assignment, and do you understand it? I think what you need to understand is what's most important is this is a multi-generational conversation. And we have heard tonight 4 generations talk about one thing, and that was first Dr. King. But you heard so many similarities and continuations of unfinished business, racism, sexism. So what we need to understand is this generation here has so many challenges. And the reason they have so many challenges is because we got so much unfinished business that started down here in my generation. So, Makayla, you said Sunday night that somewhere down the line, we dropped the baton. So the question is, where in the generation did we drop the baton? So, that's something you need to think about. Was it lost here, or was it lost there, or did we ever receive it? The baton. So with that, I want to thank this panel, esteemed panel, and I'm glad it's on our Facebook page. You can go to our Facebook page and our YouTube page, and for those people who are not here, you can sit them down, give them some popcorn, and let them watch this. This is education, truly educational. So first I want to thank, I got to start with my good friend, Dr. Phileron, right? Dr. Phileron, you're right, you taught history, and you got so much to say. And I was one of the first ones to buy one of your books. You need to get a podcast to finish the story. Yes, sir. To tell the rest of the story. You got so much to tell. Sister Sandra, you're a trailblazer in this community. And for those who don't know, you're a trailblazer in this community. You're history. One of the first people to integrate Gainesville High School in a lot of communities. And I'm willing to bet you, the majority of black students that go to Gainesville High School right now today has never heard of Sandra Cummings. We thank you for being a trailblazer. Dr. Edwards, I feel your passion. I thank you for what you do. I honestly do. Coming from Connecticut, anywhere down south in Florida, it's a transition. I don't know how you did it. It has been passion. Thank you for your commitment to the kids in our school system and your passion as well. I know this man has passion. From Kennedy Homes to where he is now. This man has a passion for our young African American youth. I know his passion. I've been working with him for decades. I knew him from Kennedy Homes over the building made down by Sister Shahi. I know him. But there's no saying that just because you're born in a ghetto, that doesn't mean that the ghetto is in you. This brother has demonstrated that he may have come from a ghetto, but he's not ghetto. And I appreciate you continuing to give back with your passion to our young people. So let's thank our good friend, my good friend, Brother Ron. The next generation, the TikTok generation, or whatever we want to call them, Gen Z, no, they're Z now. Let me tell y'all have challenges, but I know one thing, y'all prepare for. Makayla, I know you, because I heard you speaking last Sunday. And if you haven't heard Makayla's speech, we're going to soon have it on our YouTube page. She is articulate and she knows where she's going, and you can tell she also understands what goes on in our country and in politics. That's what you got to understand. So I want to thank Makayla Flanders, our 2023 Edna M Hart Keeper, the Dream Scholarship Award Recipient, and she's dual enrolled at Eastside High School and Santa Fe College, and she's going on the heels to Florida. So unique. And I kept saying, I'm looking at this name, and I read her application because she too applied for our scholarship. I read her resume, her bio, and she too is just as qualified to win that scholarship we had as Makayla. And it was very, very close in our story. But so unique, you truly are so unique. And I commend you because you know where you want to go based upon your life experiences. And to want to become a healthcare administrator on your own clinics, I want to tell you, you know where you want to go, and you know what you want to do, and you're going to get there. And you too are going up on the hill to Florida A&M University. And we're going to help you so you need, you can believe that. Anthony Richardson, I don't know where to start with this one right here. Man, this community is so proud of you and what you've accomplished. So I don't even know where to begin. All of us are so proud of this brother. To be born in Gainesville, in East Gainesville, come from an apartment complex, play for high school, go across town to the University of Florida, make his own impact at the University of Florida, never forgetting where he's come from, prepared himself, did it the right way, didn't cut no corners, and look where he's headed, to the beginning. We're so proud of you, man. You make us proud. And you're going to continue to make us proud. We're going to be rooting for you. Now, there might be an opening down in Tampa. There might be an opening at the Dallas Cowboys. They need quarterbacks all over this league. But I can tell you, wherever you go, you're going to be prepared for that community. They're going to love you. You're going to love them. But never forget where you come from. And remember, this community needs you because you got a passion for young people. You need to come back and sow into your young people. You need to invest in your community here because this is where you're from. And there are going to be many of us there who will be cheering for you and can help you. And God's favor is going to be on your life. I want to thank a couple of people that came here tonight. Did Mayor Randall leave already? Mayor Randall has been here a couple of times, a couple of nights. I want to thank Mayor Randall for thinking it not robbery to come and be with us for the last 2 nights. Thank her for coming. Also, the newly sworn in mayor of the city of Gainesville, Harvey Ward. Shut up, Harvey. Shut up, Harvey. Let everybody see you. So, now, there are a lot of elected officials in Alachua County, from federal down to local. When we have these types of events, y'all need to look around and see what elected officials be coming to these events. We appreciate you, Mr. Mayor, for coming. We appreciate your commitment to our community. We all heard your speech. You had one of the most intriguing and I think passionate speeches when you were sworn in. And there are going to be those of us here who are going to be helping you and want to work with you for your vision in this city. That's Mayor Harvey Ward. Now, I'll be remiss, but I did not recognize the Honorable Michonne Ross, Judge Michonne Ross. Because Michonne understands this. Because she used to be in the same position of planning these events. Your Honor, we're proud of you too in this community. And we thank you for all that you've done for the Martin Luther King Commission, but mainly what you're doing for our community. Now, I'm getting some cues. And what are the cues? Okay, I can continue. Okay, good. All right, look at the back of your program for all of our activities in the back. I don't want to go through all of them, but there are just a couple that I want to just reference to you. One, on this coming Friday at 6 o'clock at the Bodega Plaza, the Martin Luther King Commission is sponsoring the 2nd annual Stephen P. Mickle Jazz Concert. It's important that we continue the legacy of a trailblazer in this community. It's Stephen P. Mickle, so that event is free and open to the public. Also, on Saturday night, we're still programming multicultural events, so we invite you to come out to the Star Center Theater we're putting on and co-partnering with Successful Living, which is Diane McGraw's business entity, and also Breakthrough Group Homes, and the admission is free. So come out and participate in that event as well. On Monday, we have 3 events, and we want this community to participate in. We're providing shuttle bus transportation, free, compliments of the city of Gainesville, so you can park your car at Citizens Field, catch the shuttle bus downtown, and be a part of our 11 a.m. program, which is our enshrinement program, where Makayla is going to be enshrined in perpetuity in our Hall of Fame, and Sidney Jackson, our Hall of Fame Award recipient as well. At 12 noon, we have the commemorative parade. We're asking everybody to come and participate in the parade, a march, as we call it. It's now a parade. We're going to march from downtown over to Citizens Field. We're asking for organizations, churches to bring banners and signs with your t-shirts, come and participate and march over to Citizens Field. And for participating, we're going to give you a certificate of participation. You're going to be able to take a lovely picture in front of our new branded banner that we have now that's on forward, so you'll know that you were there in history. Also, we're going to have a TikTok. Okay, y'all got it ready? You and Mike, y'all got it? TikTok. See, we all learning this TikTok stuff. But anyway, we're going to have a viral TikTok on Monday, the national holiday, that everybody can be in. That they're going to show you the little TikTok movement that you got to do in order to be on the TikTok video. And we want to have every generation in the TikTok. So if we want to know what they're doing, we got to start doing some of the things that they're doing so we can understand what that generation, how they're operating. So we thank you all for coming. We have food for you tonight that you can take. We thank you very much. Compliments of our sponsors tonight. And we want to just thank everybody for coming out tonight. Now let's recognize the board of directors. You see these ladies and gentlemen in these kind of burgundy coats? This is our board of directors. So I'll be remiss if I didn't recognize you. The vice president is Diane McGraw. She's here tonight. Our treasurer, Janice Nix Cruz. Our chaplain is the Marie Harrod, Reverend Dr. Marie Harrod. We also want to recognize our board members, Mike Powell, Anna Clackley, Deidre Harvey, C.S. Scott. Where's Margaret Travis? Margaret's here somewhere. She's in the kitchen. So let's thank all of them for participating. Is Darrell Anderson here? Darrell Anderson is here. He's our honorary member representing the Big Brothers. Thank y'all, brothers of Alpha Phi, for participating, and we thank y'all for coming out and being with us again on tonight. Finally, where's the Bronzy? Oh, yeah, Bronzy. I recognize him earlier as a coordinator, but he's also a booker. He's the past president also of the Josiah T. Wallace Bar Association. And I want to recognize my lovely wife, Dr. Carol Martin Long. Hello, Mom. Way to go to you. So, also I want to recognize, are there any past Martin Luther King Jr. Commission Board of Directors here, Executive Directors? I see Jackie Hart, she's here. Thank y'all for coming. Are there any faith leaders here? We always want to recognize our faith leaders. Any other faith leaders who are here? And I want to thank the family of this wonderful church for opening up your doors for 2 nights to this community. Pastor Harry, thank you. I want to thank all of the members. And I want to thank the first gentleman. He was one of the first people here to help us out. Brother Pop Harris, thank you. Mr. McQuillan, thank you very much. You've been very, very helpful to us as well. And Doc, I forgot your name, but you've been here with us too. Thank you so very, very much. We're just so honored to be here. And we thank y'all for allowing us to do this now. 39 years, the Martin Luther King Commission has been programming activities in this community. And next year, we'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary next year. So with that, I think all hearts and minds are clear. And I think we're going now to the benediction from the Reverend Dr. Marie Harrod.
Good evening. Good evening. This has been wonderful. I want to thank all of you, and I know every one of you did a wonderful job. And I tell you, it was just hard to sit there and not even interject anything, especially when you're talking about women. And so you were so right. And we'll talk a little later. But I want to inform you that on next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll start our Empowerment Revival. And on Wednesday night, it will be Boys and Girls Night Out, where we will be addressing gun violence. And Anthony Richardson will be here. Amen. Amen. And then on that Thursday, from 6 to 7, we're going to discuss women's roles in the church. And so you may want to come and listen, especially the women. If you do anything in the church, you may want to come and listen to that discussion. Reverend John McKenzie will be the moderator. And then, of course, our spiritual revival starts that Thursday night with Pastor Wendy Smith Martin out of Atlanta, Georgia. So we expect to have a great time. I want to thank all of you for coming there. It's so good to see you. And if all hearts and minds are clear, will you stand? Okay, yes. You go this way to get your food. Micah 6 and 8 says, "What doth the Lord require of thee? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. Now unto him who is able to keep us from falling, and present you faultless before his presence with exceeding joy. To the only wise God our Savior, be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, both now and forever." And Father, we thank you for the food that we're about to receive, for the nourishment of our bodies. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.